security. Of course, we do know right about now that a heavy blanket of security still continues to cover the entire Kampala in light of the tensions that we saw on Tuesday. That particular sentiment is still riding high among the youth, and that will form the crust of our discussion this morning. We want to break down the youth and what they can do, especially in being critical actors in Uganda's socio-economic development agenda. The trajectory is one that has been a bit of fits and starts. Many do not know exactly where they are or what they stand to do and what avenues they can undertake in order to be those actors in Uganda's economic trajectory. The latest protests an opportunity for the youth to stand up and be counted, or is it yet again another disjointed and to some disinterested action? I have with me a full house, and the eminent persons will be helping me understand and indeed offer perspective to you on what can be done. On my extreme left, I have a lawyer, seasoned at that, Judge Musisi. Many thanks for making it.
Pleasure to be here. Good morning to the viewers.
I also have with me Mrs. Charity Kalebo. Many thanks for making it this morning.
Thank you again, and thank you for calling me Kalebo.
You're most welcome. But
isn't it your name?
Should there be any?
No, there is no more. Shouldn't there be any aspects? I'm just happy.
You're happy.
Yes.
To be
when
called.
you call that name, you really make me very happy.
All right, that's interesting. We'll be talking about that a little bit later. We also have a young leader with us, Miss Gloria Namakula, coming from the Youth Line Forum. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for giving me this platform.
You're most welcome. And on my immediate left, I have Bernard Odoi, Youth MP, Eastern Uganda. Many thanks.
Thank you.
Let me begin with the gentleman on my extreme left. When the questions arise, somebody might think it's because of the protests that are going on, that have been led by the youth. I do not rather disengage from the fact that they are timely, and the questions that we need to ask, some of them come out of the fact that the youth were able to come out, have their voice, and be seen to be counted. What do you make of this kind of movement? Is it one that represents a significant shift in how the youth want to handle their matters or anything that concerns them?
Well, thanks, Chris. I may not use the word significant shift. I think what I make of it is we are seeing voices speaking out, and then the power of social media. Remember previously, people to have a voice to air out whatever grievances they had to go either through the traditional media or when they meet their leaders. So social media has broken the barriers of expression that a person can express their opinion even in the comfort of their home, from whatever part of the country. And then on the other hand, you have dissatisfaction. There is a group, or a big group of people who feel that they are disconnected from the government programs. You know that the demographics of this country, even from the last statistics, the youth make up over 70% of this country. And the question should be, how inclusive are they? How do they feel that they are part of government? To what extent do they feel? With the greatest of respect to Honorable Bernard here, it's not possible that a member of parliament can represent a region. Even if you wanted to be as effective, even if you are as competent as you can, like Honorable Bernard, you can't represent even 10 districts. We even have someone called the National Youth MP. To what extent do they, and then of course it fizzles down, youth chairpersons at the districts and what. But as an ordinary youth, let me bring it at a very basic level. You have a small saloon, you are employing maybe 2 people. In a mall in Kampala, you have to pay trading license, you have to pay where you put garbage, you have to pay electricity bills and rent. And then on top of that, you hear that someone has been given 500 billion, another one has stolen 2 billion. So to what extent do you feel that you are part of government? Or is government part of you? You only feel part of government when it's coming to clamp down on you because you don't have a UR 18 or you have not paid your taxes. In the meantime, you are struggling to maintain your small business. In the meantime, you hear billions being dished. So for me, when I link those two, the dissatisfaction, the lack of inclusion, and then the freedom to air out voices really has enabled mobilization. Okay. And so that we're just seeing people venting out what ordinarily they would be saying in smaller groups.
All right. You introduce a very interesting aspect of representation, as in how you ask the question, can one person represent an entire region when there are districts that have 3?
I mean, a district has one woman MP.
That question,
10 or even 12.
We shall delve into it a little bit later, but allow me bring on board Miss Gloria Namakula. She's a young leader. Tell us about the Youth Line Forum and what's your take on what he has said is not a significant shift, but something that does represent a new approach to the way the youth are beginning to see things or act where they need to act.
Thank you very much. Once again, I'm Namakula Gloria. I'm from the Youth Line Forum. I'm a young leader. So when you talk about Youth Line Forum, this is an NGO that mentors leaders. They look at young people from civil society, from young leaders, from young people from school, because I qualified to go through that mentorship. I just graduated from school, so I went through that mentorship. So when you talk about the shifts that are taking place now, it's young people saying enough is enough. We have gone through a lot. We don't feel represented. We feel there is a bleach. We are lacking. We are not. There is no inclusivity. So like what Council has talked about, that at least right now we are able to express ourselves through social media, and maybe after waiting for dialogue has not given us results. We have decided that this time around we are not going to sit back and watch, keep on seeing social injustices taking place. We have decided to move to the streets. You never know, we can be heard, but totally we are grieved. We are not feeling well.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. That is a sentiment that permeates the social media platforms, X, Facebook, and TikTok. I do not know whether it's the same kind of wave that is riding under the bridges in the rural areas. It's difficult to know the sentiment among the youth in that particular, or rather those particular areas. But I think Honorable Bernard Odoi, being an MP for Eastern Region, does understand how his constituents and the electorate are feeling, or you've been able to touch base to know exactly what is happening in light of the protests and the dissatisfaction, so to speak, with the economic situation. But also tell us, why are you as a youth leader not prominently seen to be leading or even supporting these particular initiatives, especially the wave of social media that is calling for protests against the massive corruption?
Well, thank you so much. To bring this up to speed, for me, I want to look at the drivers first. What is it that is driving my electoral college, the youth? It's a settled matter that we, the youth, constitute the majority of our population. The current UBOS preliminary indicates that over 73% are aged below 30. Now, for me, what is driving the youth into expressing their issues is, one, the political space. The youth, like you rightly said, Council Musisi, feel they are not part of the negotiating table. They are not part of the political leadership. If you made reference to our representation at the regional level and then national female youth MP, this is the creation of our constitution under the affirmative action. And to that extent, then it was a score. Even when this was created, the population had not exploded to this level. Now, for the framers of the constitution at that time, they deemed it fit that regional representation would make sense to have the issues of the youth addressed on the floor. Now, the other issue that I want my electoral college are looking at is the issue of social injustice. The youth, of course, are feeling the pressure of the social injustices, issues of human rights. Not much space is given. A young person is doing something, but they are not protected. So this has pushed them to look for other ways how to bring out their issues. The other one, of course, is the perceived corruption in this country. The perceived corruption by government officials, and then the issue of abuse of office.
Did you use the word perceived corruption?
Yes. Why? Because, and this is deliberate.
Okay.
Matters, there are instances where court has made pronouncement against those involved in this. But for the current matter, like colleagues who are from the house where I sit, the matter is before court. So I rightly put it that way, that perceived corruption and abuse of office,
okay,
when court then makes a decision. But also, youth are desperate. We are getting into the electoral season very soon, and the majority have been asking for reforms, electoral reforms, and they are not seeing this coming to pass. There should be amendments, constitutional reforms. They are not seeing this coming to pass. The issue of economic difficulties. Uganda as a country considered the most entrepreneurial. Youth start businesses, but because of the difficulties that a young person cannot have access to funds, and yet they see in the budgeting process not much is given to them where they call home, that they can run and say, yes, a young person in Katwe, in Karamoja, engaged in agriculture, engaged in welding, or whatever choice they are in, they are not seeing the future. The huge component of our population is so much engaged in performing arts. They are engaged in sports. But if we look at what is budgeted for to support sport, which for me would actually be one of the greatest avenues of absorbing the youth unemployment issues, because we've seen the likes of Cheptegei, they train alone, they become champions, and they win a lot of money, and then they prosper. Youth in music, youth in production, youth in innovation, not enough is availed for them to realize their full potential. A very huge demography that, when harnessed very well, would spark economic development in this country and build a greater future.
All right, that's very interesting and enlightening in equal measure. Mrs. Kalebo, you've been literally an observer for a long time, given your work in the civic space and political observancy. What you're seeing right now in terms of the youth embracing the need to be part of what conditions policy, basically to be able to be heard without necessarily waiting for government to yambe, you know. Do you see this as a culmination of efforts that have been going on by various players, or are we simply looking at a spontaneous implosion, something that is coming off as a result of not anyone actually having done some groundwork? Is more like sentiment rising on account of, well, the youth excited for the sake of it, doesn't know what will happen tomorrow after the excitement is gone? Is it something like that? Why? I hope I bring it clearly, because there's a possibility the youth 5 years ago might have had other issues to take care of and could have talked quite aggressively, but on different things. The youth right now, or those who have come into that bracket to fill up the gap left by those who have now become older, are also attending to other things.
So I like the discussion around the demographics and how they keep changing. And of course, as the demographics change, the thought process around the ones that join that bracket do not change.
Okay.
And this is how I'm going to explain it. So young people have been telling the government they are tired of being told they went to the bush. They don't care whether the NRM went to the bush and liberated them or not. For them, what they want is what these two gentlemen have talked about, inclusion. I sat at a table for the first time, I think, 2 days ago, with people from the ghetto, young boys. And they told me, do you know how we ended up in the ghetto? I had never thought in my head I would end up on a table with the ghetto youth across, because they're not within my space. But as it happens, I sat with them to listen on how they elect members of parliament and if they think it is representative. And they said, no, it's not representative. Secondly, they said they lack information. They are closed out and they are judged. They said some of us were born by women conceived us from wherever they conceived us from and dumped us. They threw us on the streets, they put us in gutters, and were picked up by well-wishers who took us to the ghetto. Then once we found ourselves growing, we had to get into certain engagements, but there is no opportunity for us, not one that we see likely. And they said some of us are educated up to P7, where we found some free education. Some of us are not at all educated. Some of us have taught ourselves to listen to radio talk shows. Every one of us has a radio, has a phone you've stolen or something. We've taught ourselves to listen into this information and try to access services for ourselves. But they said in the ghetto, you will not find a school that is functional and working. You will not find a health center that is functional and working, and you don't have money. So what we go into is drugs. We sell drugs, and we have market for those drugs. But we also create those drugs, and some of us abuse those drugs. But the reason we abuse them is because the problems we face, we are overwhelmed. Now, these guys were talking, and...
It was a hard conversation.
Yes. Yes.
How did it end? What were the resolutions?
So the reason why we reached out to them, I have a small organization that is trying to galvanize efforts around young people. I am a board member on that organization, not the one that I am executive director. And the whole idea is if you transform this energy into production, Uganda changes drastically. Because you're saying the demographics are 73% are young people. Take them into digital training, train them digitally. These people had very good skills of art. One of the things I found them doing are wall hangings, amazing wall hangings. Again, if I showed you those wall hangings, you not believe these are the people I'm talking about right now, who have no father, who have no mother, who said we want to access national IDs, but we can't access them because one of the requirements for getting a national ID,
you have an elaborate family background.
A family.
Someone can't even trace an uncle.
And you need a national ID to have a SIM card. You've been closed out. You don't have a SIM card, so you've been closed out. You can't access information. You can't access many services. You want to go to S5 or even S4, you need a national ID because you're going to register for UNEB and you need a national ID. And they're saying we are locked out simply because we don't have parents, but it was not our question. And it's the first time I hear this.
I've heard about it, but the way you've again phrased it to me has completely toppled my conscience.
Yes, so ideally they have skills, but we need to up those skills. We need to also open up information segments for them. We need to make them access the actual money that government has put out for them. There is PDM money, there is GROW money. But this money in GROW is going to the same people like Honorable here. They can access it. They have people whom they know who are in their circles, and they put them there. And they continue to live out these ghetto youth who continue to accumulate in number. And they're the ones who will come back to haunt those who live in glass houses.
Council.
Yes, Chris.
The dilemma that I pick from that is a lack of planning on the part of the older persons for our younger people. The government systematically, I don't think there was a realization, for example, that there is a section of youth, especially those in the ghetto, that don't have a line of kinsmen to go to.
Of course, there are two things.
And that completely changes the narrative.
There are two things there, Chris, from what Kalebo is saying. One, how responsive are government programs that are designed to apparently help these people? Are they bottom-up designs? Are they supposed to address the needs of these people? If government comes up with this, a few years ago there was something called Youth Livelihood Program.
It's still there.
And I remember the last time I had the Minister of, I think, Gender was complaining that many people, I think they're supposed to borrow money and return it, and many people had not returned it. And if you had to carry out an audit of that program and say how many youths, how many lives were changed by this program, was it designed with all sorts of people that Charity is talking about in mind? Then the other issue is that you can't separate some of these things designed by government with the other maladministration and incompetence we see elsewhere. The issue of corruption that you talk about is embedded in what Charity is saying, that if there's something called GROW, I'm just giving an example, how does a youth in Chanamkaka or in Mukono or in Pader access it without any form of person saying that I know Chris at the sub-county, he will put me there? Is it free for all? Is it free access? Or is it, I'm just using Honorable Bernard as an example because it's here, that Honorable Bernard is the ED and he knows someone, and then the ED also relates to others, whoever is there. So what I'm saying, that the incompetence we see elsewhere is embedded in these programs, and of course that points to the issues of access, that they cannot access, and it all goes back to where we started from, that an ordinary youth, and of course there are different types of youth. There is one who is educated, is even a graduate possibly, but he has no job. Then there's one who is dropped out of senior 4 for whatever reason or whatever, and he's trying to find something to do in life. So how do these people approach or get access to government programs without any form of patronage? And of course we can't dissect the two, because the patronage is filled up in every government program.
That's right. Thank you very much, George Musisi. I'm afraid we're going to have to go for a break because it's top of the hour, but when we return, we shall begin with Gloria Namakula, a young leader who should be able to tell us whether there is any form of engagement or collaboration to address some of the key issues that have arisen, most especially when it comes to the clustering of youth, because I've just also realized that maybe plans don't work if you, for example, say we are going to give money to the youth, and then you later realize that there is a whole section that if you ask them to go back to somebody, they can't even call a father, they can't call a mother, they can't call a brother, they can't call a sister. They don't even know that wherever village their fathers, or it's quite disturbing. And I hope within the corridors of power, the planning process must kind of undergo a fundamental shift. It is very disturbing when you learn that you were born on the street and you really can't actually figure out anything. We'll be right back. I'm glad you're still with us. For those that went with us into the break, if you're just joining us, welcome on board. We are discussing the youth dividend in socio-economic transformation. The nation finds itself in troubled waters, and the youth are beginning to speak out. Speaking out and using all avenues possible, something that is changing because it wasn't happening before, that you would see a mass of humans creating the kind of wave that they are creating. We were hearing some very disturbing facts about the demographics of youth, and I'm still trying to come to terms with the fact that a critical service can be rolled out in a community and then people line up to receive that particular service. And when one youth or two reach the table and they are asked for a national ID and they don't have it, I doubt those who are disbursing out, it could be funds or any other thing, would want to ask why this particular youth can't access a national ID. They don't have anybody to write in terms of father, mother, or even extended family. Those are very telling revelations. I would like to ask Gloria Namakula, a youth leader, young leader, so to speak, from Youth Line Forum, whether there has been any engagement that your organization is part of to address some of the disparities that may not be apparent to policy makers. Believe me, there is somebody in the corridors of power who is supposed to decide what particular initiative goes to a section of youth, but hasn't actually figured out the reasons as to why some cannot even get national IDs. Is there any concerted effort that you're part of?
Yes. So what you're talking about is real. Many youth are suffering because they can't get some services because of the conditions attached to them. It is very true and it is very evident. So as Youth Line Forum, they have tried to call upon youth from all walks of life to tell them, you know what, if you get education, if you get informed, maybe you could access this. But however much these attempts are there, still there are limitations, because you find that different policies, that different programs that are brought on board, research is known, people sit in their boardrooms, come up with things that don't appeal to us, the people on the grassroots, because we have been informed here that people can't access services because they don't have a national ID. Did the person who tried to bring out maybe the PDM realize that there is a category of youth that don't have national IDs because it's not out of their making? You find that systems in Uganda, the policies, people sit wherever they sit, they draw something, they bring it on board. But even the youth who are learned, who are going to school, I for one, I want to give an example. I've been able to go to school. I'm a graduate. I graduated last year. So after graduating with my Bachelor of Science in Natural Resource Economics, I came very excited to go to the field to get these skills, you know. But when I reached the field, I decided to go for graduate training. I moved to one of government. It's a government. I don't want to mention it, yes. So I moved to this office, met the human resource. I was smartly dressed, you know, with this energy that let me go, and this time around I'll be given an offer. Well spoken, I talked about myself, I had the CV. Then the guy looked at me, he was like, young lady, who has sent you here?
Who has sent you here?
As in, who has given you a recommendation? I'm like, no one has given me a recommendation. I feel I'm supposed to be here. That's why I'm here. Because I just want a ground where I can train, I get skills so that I can better myself. Because this was, I told him this is a public office. He's like, no, if you don't have a recommendation, if you don't have anyone from government who has sent you here, then I can't help you. I want to be open with you. Maybe put there your CV. Maybe if chance allows, this is a government entity. Now you can imagine me who is half informed or who is informed about something, still I try to get to these spaces, to get access, and someone pushes you away. So I tried in several spaces, but I didn't have a recommendation. So what I decided, I'm in downtown, I sell jewelry. That is what I do. But
you're a graduate of natural resource economics.
Yes.
Okay, and you've transitioned to selling jewelry. I'm not saying there shouldn't be anything like that, but I think that does help us understand the dysfunctional nature of government planning and the rollout that should be able to help youth find jobs readily. That was very unfortunate. I hope it emboldened, sure, the example you give, it emboldened you to be able to go and do something else. And that is something when the planners look at the youth and blame them for the education system. Many times when you hear at workshops and conferences, you are not job creators, you're job seekers. That is blame throwing, that you've done all you've done, you've graduated from university, and it's on you that you can't actually do what? Yet there is a system of education, a curriculum that has been created by the older persons. Most of them went through it. It was good at the time. But anyway, I shouldn't also be lamenting about that. Honorable, there is a story I read, and I think you were still younger than you are right now, of garbage collection. You were a garbage collector. I don't know a lot of detail about that, but let them share that story. What is this garbage collection thing, and how does it fuse itself into our discussion? Because I know many people out there might be doing the same, and they can be able to better themselves.
Thank you so much. Now, garbage collection, my story is I came to the city as a senior for graduate. There was no money to continue with education at a high school level. So I came to the city, did pottery work, then bought a bicycle, and then I started collecting garbage from people's homes in Kabalagala, Mayenga, Mongo areas. So to survive, just like most of our youth do. So then I was living in Namongo. I still live in Namongo, in the ghettos of Namongo. That is one of the biggest slums in this area, in this country. Now, situation pushed me to act beyond the normal. And then from the site to then buying a bicycle, then collecting garbage. Then later on, I then registered it as a company. That was in 2009 when I was actually then in Senior 6. I had collected some money, so while juggling Senior 6, I was also doing my waste management. The company is Ben City. It has now grown, and we are employing several youth. We are actually now at the level of recycling plastic waste into pavers. We are also producing biodegradable we use biodegradable waste to produce manure for organic farming. Now, this takes me to the core, where Charity indicated the youth in the slum. I come from that background, I live in that background, I understand that space. Actually, in 2014, when the government introduced the Registration of Persons Act, the law that established NIRA, I registered from Namongo. My ID still reads Namongo. Now, the Registration of Persons Act has provisions that clearly allows people in the form to indicate who is your mother, unknown. So you tick unknown. Who's your father? You tick unknown. So that category of people are actually catered for. What might be lacking is the dissemination of information.
Of that information to the people.
That NIRA must get out of the comfort space and then spread this information. I was privileged. By then, 2014, I was the LC1 chairman of one of the zones in Namongo. So I participated in the integral part of the registration because LCs were required to recommend. But there's also fear amongst our people because of the fear of the unknown. You don't know your mother, you don't know your father, you're just there, then you fear. When I go there, will I be served? Now, this is a matter that, as a representative of the youth, we must address. Government must address. NERA must address. But also the other issue is when this ghetto youth has registered, how have you simplified for them to receive the national ID? For me, is the other thing. That this person lives in the ghetto, in Amongo, wherever they are, in Kisenyi, in Kamwacha, the fear that they must move from their locality to maybe a nearer office. They have never been to such spaces. Creates fear. So NERA or government must address this, that when you've registered these people, take these cards back to them. The other big issue is that quite over 1 million people have not actually gone to pick their cards, their national IDs. It's also a big matter. Now, government in handling all these matters, including PDM, requires national ID for simple things to identify you and also be accountable. Now, for me, the whole background that you asked me about the waste management or garbage collection, this is a very good base. The issue is how many of us
can actually grow the business
to realize the potential.
Is there a support structure?
What support structure has government put in place for me to go and access? The other time I sampled and I went to one of the banks. I am a member of parliament. Government put in billions of money through banks including
Centenary Bank,
for businesses that had issues during COVID, post-COVID recovery. I applied for that money. I wanted to understand. At my level as youth MP, applied. They even asked me to deposit money there for the processing. Then at time T, they told me they need security. I told them, okay, the security is here. There's this title. How many of our youth actually have title?
They don't have.
Now, to make matters worse, even after giving them the title, I was later told that you are not successful. But I spent close to 2 million shillings.
Trying to secure that money.
Trying to secure this, because I wanted to prove a point to my people that no, as parliament, we appropriated this money. Government brought this conversation, and there's actually money available to spark this economic development.
All right. That's interesting. Council,
Yes, President.
Hearing that must be something that offers you some sort of reflection on the how, if a youth accessing government money requires a title and another 2 million Uganda shillings. This is a guy who can hardly walk, who can hardly afford a bike, a border to the bank, and the process takes all that money. Does that mean government is deliberately sidelining the youth? This is all hoodwinking?
I don't think it's, I wouldn't even call it deliberate sidelining, because they are not prioritizing any other sector anyway. It's not that they are very efficient in another sector. The issue is that the people in charge of the policy making, I don't think are so much concerned as to whether these policies they're designing are for effectiveness or not. And then their supervisors as well. I don't think if government brings a program like Youth Livelihood or MYOGA, they sit back and audit and say, okay, after 2 years, what has worked and what hasn't, and then let's try to design or to change strategies. I don't think they do that. I think their purpose is to do a process, and of course in that process corruption is embedded. So because of that issue of corruption, they don't mind whether there are results or not. It's not designed to change the youth's lives. It's designed to tick a box. Then secondly, government is not very responsive to what the youth say. Because if their voices...
It's not listening.
It's not listening.
Yeah.
And the protests that were in town this week and are evident of that. That even if you disagree with the mode they have chosen, what have you put in place to ensure that they listen, you listen to them, and not just for cosmetics and optics, because that is another issue the government has, that to put up a semblance of representation, to say that, oh, you have a youthful minister, oh, but having a youthful minister, even if cabinet was full of youthful people, if they are not responsive, it doesn't necessarily translate into youth voices being heard. Yeah. So it's not listening, and then they are seemingly closing all the avenues that they would have listened, because even if there are grievances, you listen to them, create an avenue for listening to them. If you are closing down, saying the protests to disrupt business, but much more business has been disrupted by closure of roads and deployments than that could have been disrupted if you let these people maybe go and say, well, let's walk to Kololo and listen, like the president did with the traders. So sometimes it's about that point where you think that government maybe doesn't care, maybe it's not listening, maybe it's not ready to engage, and that is, of course, when there's a stalemate, everyone suffers.
Okay. Charity, the disengagement on the part of government might be attributed to a lot of factors, including the need to consolidate power, so to speak. But let's talk about disengagement on the part of the youth. Sometimes we might feel very sympathetic, but when there are some sections of the youth who we must be able to not blame as such, but awaken in a way, the levels of disengagement on civic issues among some young people is disturbing. They assume that is not their issue. That is somebody else's battle to fight. So much so that when it comes to social media, again, the ones you see are the enlightened ones, the ones who you've seen in a few other things that are either political or, they've been around for a while. They largely, those who are disengaged, how do you get them out of that? Well, me, I don't even call it a comfort zone. It's a very uncomfortable zone. How do we get them out of that?
So it is important that government now, the president assents to the civic education policy. Civic education policy. That policy, he has sat with it for a very long time. It was given to him in 2011. And I think one of the considerations is what you've been talking about, that for him, he probably thought about how do I galvanize power. But the quicker way to galvanize power is to empower these youth, other than leave them the way they are. If you leave them the way they are, they will push back. And so these protests may have failed right now, but how many of them have given up altogether? How many of them have said, okay, let's go to bed and sleep? Or how many of them are reorganizing for another day, for another time? How many of them are looking for certain support? So what did Ruto do? Ruto sat on Twitter, and for the first time he had 6 million
views and engagements.
Young people who went online to have conversation, and by the way, they spoke. Suppose President Museveni, through his media mechanism, instead of saying don't go and protest, said let's have a conversation. I'm going to be on X. Me, President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, I'm going to be
not my handler.
He's not used to
and he says, he's used. He has had a lot of conversations with people. He has taught people PDM. He has taught people a number of production things.
He gives lectures, not conversations. The two are different.
No, when he went to Changwanzi, he actually had conversation. I don't want to just think that he just talks at them. I like to remain a bit balanced there. If he went on to X...
How many times have you seen the president talking to Ugandans?
Having conversations?
No, the problem with that is because he's always on TV. You see, when you're on TV, you're not having a conversation.
There is no opportunity for immediate feedback.
The feedback is not there. But if he went on X, and that's why I'm saying let him go on
X
and allow them to speak. This time he should not talk. He should say, you know what, I have come here.
There was an attempt the other day when youth gathered at Kololo. I think, I forget the exact nature of the event, but he had an opportunity, or rather he gave them an opportunity at one point in his speech to listen to what they were saying. And he was quickly dismayed at the fact that they were simply heckling. And he quickly shot back. He was like, shut up. you know, this is not what I offered you, this is not the opportunity I gave you, I need you to talk to me, then all of what you're doing is, that showed that
there was a disconnect.
Such an arrangement can be difficult one to work. I don't know.
Because on X, you see, you're not seeing him directly.
You saw the fear factor is dealt with.
Yeah, it's done. So you're going to tell him what you want to tell him. And then you have this comfort of thinking, okay, they're not going to pick me up immediately. I can be a boat, a robot, anything, but I've spoken. And what I have put across. And then from X, you can do all these things. Now look at the information that has come in. Analyze it. Use it to inform policy. Use it to improve processes. And this question of fear is real.
Can you just
submit very quickly?
Yeah, I want to comment on what Charity indicated about the president addressing the youth on X-Space. Most of us from the ghetto actually have no access to this kind of funds. Now, the majority of the youth in this country are not on X. So the very small portion of the population can be addressed on X-Space. But I want to recall and remind, it's something I should pursue. When in 2020, during the campaign trail, I made a presentation to the president and requested, and he was obliged. He said, no, we have 18 sub-regions in this country. It shouldn't be a hard thing for me to arrange and meet the youth, especially at sub-regional level. I think for me, that is more comprehensive than the issue of X-Space or social media. Now we've seen the president moving around and we are fast tracking. It's going to work. We, the leaders, should be accountable and then push for this.
Met a single sub-region.
No, he has met.
Which youth where?
No, he has been in Lango, he has been in West Nile. Yes.
Did they speak to him or he spoke to them?
No, they met.
He spoke at them, yes, because that's the difference.
It is not possible that when you're meeting 5,000 people, you will allow 100 or 1,000 to speak. But you don't so they conference and then have a summary of a memo that is summarized.
So that conferencing is not working.
That is by
far better than
X-Space.
No. X is better.
You talked of the ghetto.
Yes, I know about the ghetto.
In the ghetto across this country.
The one thing you should agree on is that every Ugandan right now who is about 15 years of age, the likelihood that they own a phone is high. Now, we don't want to go into whether it's what they call that, Mapesa or a smartphone. Let's first begin with the fact that they own a phone. So the likelihood for them to shift from the button piece to the smartphone can actually happen. But within the space that X is and its ability to cause a wave, the president, like Charity says, must be open to conversations on such platforms. And he should not be quick to lose his temper.
Yes, he shouldn't.
Yeah, I think that one is, it's an honest conversation, and I hope the president can fully understand how we bring
children
it.
And your children are answering you, responding to you in a way that's not befitting.
That's not befitting.
I think it's also important for the children to
understand how to talk to the president.
Give it time. A conversation.
Who taught those children how to talk? They grew up in the ghetto. They are from the gutter. They have no relative. They don't know anything. They have no whatever. So you just
fundamentally, you should be able to talk to them from their mindset.
Yes, exactly.
If he's from the ghetto, let me listen to him as I would listen to the person from the ghetto. Yes. So if they say something like Mana Muzei, you should be able to take it. Be. Not completely.
Those are very normal words. No,
I give an example.
Not like the one who's serving 6 years.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me go for a break. When we return, this conversation will continue, but we also have to talk to the State Minister for Tourism, who will be talking to us, or rather sharing perspective on the latest developments in as far as the Uganda museum structures is concerned. Stay with us.
Of the programming here on MorningAtNTV.
Very much, Stephen Mbide, for that conversation with Minister Mugara. And of course, I do hope that some of the critical aspects that he has talked about can actually come to fruition as soon as possible. Allow me to return to the studio so we can wrap this conversation up on the youth dividend in Uganda's socio-economic transformation trajectory. I have with me lawyer George Musisi. I have with me too Charity Kalebo and Gloria Namakula from the Youth Line Forum, as well as the Youth MP for Eastern Uganda, Honorable Bernard Odoi. The conversation has been rich and very enlightening, but I want to understand, especially on the front of politics, now that we have what appears to be concerted effort by the youth to be able to speak out in order to condition the kind of change that they want. And let me begin this particular segment with a question to the lawyer. In international law, the rights to freedom of association, peaceful assembly, and expression are recognized in various treaties, including the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. These constitute the general need and acceptance that people must actually do what? Protest. People must demonstrate. It's a way of speaking out. The how and the what might be what the Uganda police or the state deals with, but I do not think we've reached a point where our how and what we do in terms of protesting and demonstrating requires sometimes the kind of reaction that you see from the police. On Monday, as people were gearing up for the protests, I advised the IGP on air to buy some water and give the officers who will be deployed so they can give the protesters some water at one point, especially when they are walking towards Parliament. That would have been a lovely gesture. A lovely gesture. It would leave everyone a winner in this. Because, let me tell you something, you cannot, for example, say if you're protesting from railway grounds to Parliament, who is selling tomatoes along that route?
Of course not.
Who am I going to disrupt? So, simply offer support, protection, and let them walk. But the question is there. Expression, a peaceful assembly, we are still debating this despite the fact that we know all the laws that allow for Ugandans to demonstrate. The police continues to clamp down.
Of course, the police clamp down is it's unlawful. It's unconstitutional. It's meant to suppress the voices. Apart from the international law that you've rightly cited, even our constitution is clear on the right to peaceful assembly, either in alone or in a group. Ironically, about 2 weeks ago or 10 days ago, there was a young lady, a lone lady, she's called Fatuma Nasuga. NTV covered the story. Protesting alone, holding a placard, peacefully.
Was that the pregnant lady?
I don't know.
Who had a placard that she cannot be in a country where...
She was protesting the corruption in Parliament.
Yeah, that's right.
She was roughly arrested.
I don't want to use the words she used.
So you cannot allow a lone protester, you cannot allow a group of protesters peacefully. And the question is, of course, all the responses I've had have nothing to do with the law. People are saying, is that the best form? Well, there's no one who should determine how I should protest. They are saying, why do you go on this day? Why do you... Peaceful protest is a constitutional right, and fortunately, even amongst all the people they arrested, we don't have a single person who was arrested while looting, while stepping into tomatoes, while burning tires, none. So that shows that all the people who are in custody, those who have been arraigned in court, about 70.
Are they for being idle?
But how do you, someone who is walking, how do you charge them of being idle? They're walking, clearly they're not idle.
But it's also not a crime.
So the point is, if you suppress all the areas where people should peacefully show their grievance, where do you ask them to go?
Charity.
So again, thank you, and I think I want to conclude it this way. Two things stand out. The other day we were reviewing PDM and how fight has gone, and the Minister of Finance was hell-bent on just defending the statistics that they have. I want to urge government, there were gaps. Amongst the gaps was the growing of apples. We import apples from South Africa. Suppose you organize these young people to production of apples would we stop the production, importation
of these
apples?
Fruits?
Now, if you organize them, there was also a gap in production of Irish potatoes. If you organized them to produce Irish potatoes in Mbale, in Kabale, would we have a surplus that we might even export? We even import gonja from Congo. That's we had from PDM, and this was government itself speaking. If they organize these young people, give them the information. And then there's also the question I've been speaking here about with the Honorable, that URSB does information desks where they allow young people to register companies for as low as, Namakula says 180,000, Honorable says 18,000. Now, let there be clarity. Yeah. Give us information. Let the information go out. Tell the young people that you can register your organization for as low as 180,000 or for as low as 18,000. They borrow the money, register an organization, and then say you can bid. And this is how you bid, because the bids are always in the newspaper. Honorable says that is how he managed to bid for his garbage company. So if I'm a young person and I'm watching Charity on TV and I'm looking for that one hope, what is it? That one hope will be registering my company, I do business, I earn some money, and then government will even have a tax base. Also include them in the programs you say you've set up for them. Yoga. Include them, the female, include them in the
Let it not
project.
Be ticking boxes like Musisi says.
Let it not just be the same people who benefit from these programs. Let the young people actually benefit from this program.
Gloria Namakula, what's your last word?
So my last word is, I think it's high time the government should apply the law in uniformity. We shouldn't be having ebyana n'abaana. For example, when we come to the protests of recent, there is a one Chisache something. They moved to Parliament protesting about Honorable Chikubo's yes, the way he was getting
signatures.
They moved petition peacefully. The police gave them protection, the respect, and they were gentle. Then why is it that when us the youth come out this way? Because as Councillor has said, it is part of it's our right. It's under Article 29 of the Constitution, subsection, I think D2, for us to protest. Why does the government have to suffocate us, look at us as hooligans? This should stop. We are saying enough is enough. We need the audience because we have tried to dialogue. You can imagine on the eve to that protest, government officials went on Twitter and then they said we can set off a dialogue. Remember, these people were alerted 2 months back about
this march.
Yes, then on the eve to the event, then you're telling us about dialogue. Really? Is that fair enough? Then after all they say that Gen Zs, we are unruly, we are what? No, we have not been heard. So my call to action is government has to respect, fulfill, and protect our right. It is its obligation because we are suffocated. The truth is, many young people are crying. We have lost hope. We are desperate. We don't know what tomorrow brings.
Okay.
Yes.
Honorable Bernard Odoi, I would like to be very specific. Earlier you spoke about the fact that X doesn't actually offer the best possible opportunity for dialogue between government officials, most prominently the president and the people. And we've seen the inability of any other form of dialogue to actually register the results that we want. So what kind of hybrid dialogue do we need?
Thank you.
As you're wrapping it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
In this fourth year of the 11th Parliament, the leadership of Parliament has actually designed something similar to that. We are going at regional level. We are going to have sessions in every part of this country where MPs will go to the countryside, Mbarara, Arua, Gulu, Mbale, to reach out to the people. And people from those areas will be allowed to raise their issues through the members who will be within there. So for me to strictly answer your question in the strict sense, that would suffice. Now that is from where I sit. But also allow me in just a few seconds address the issue of the petitioners against Honorable Sechikubo. The Right Honorable Deputy Speaker commented on this on Tuesday, and he said, these petitioners were many. They came on the first day, they were denied, and they were asked to reduce their number. The subsequent time they came, they were allowed 3 to present their petition. So in as much as this is concerned, a reasonable number would be allowed to actually present any petition to the August House. But going forward, the issue of our people, the youth, and URSB registration. URSB registration of business costs less than 50,000. For me, the issue should be dissemination of information or a waiver. Can government be deliberate and look at our young people with established businesses, give them waivers? But also as a legislator, I want to propose amendments to PPDA Act. Can we amend the PPDA Act to include, to waive certain requirements for like bid security, that when a youth with a registered business is applying to say supply furniture or welding materials or welded materials, they don't have to look for this bid security which they don't have. This should be amended. The other thing is access to finances. Government should avail funds to the young people so that they can spark economic development.
All right, Honorable Bernard Odoi, Youth MP for Eastern Uganda, many thanks. Many thanks to you to Gloria Namakula from the Youth Line Forum for that very enlightening perspective, and many thanks Charity Kalebo for what is no doubt always reassuring observers' view of these matters. And of course, George Musisi, many thanks for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
You're introduced me by my client, so my lawyer, George Musisi.
You've just appointed yourself. I'm the luckiest man. A lawyer has appointed himself. So whoever is out there, I have an attorney, and he's a formidable one. All right. Okay, let's break, or rather end the conversation and indeed the program with our ritual. Happy birthday to Nagasha, and this is coming